Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle, and welcome to Live with Raising a Reader. Thanks for joining us for another episode of our Radical Collaborations series. And we are here today with a very special guest. I can't wait for you all to meet him. I'd like to say a few words about Malcolm Mitchell before we get started. I'm thrilled to be here with the one and only Super Bowl champion, author, founder, and executive director, and literacy advocate, Malcolm Mitchell. Malcolm is a native of Valdosta, Virginia. As a high school senior, he was the Under Armour All-American and went on to finish in the top 10 all-time receivers during his playing career at the University of Georgia. After graduating from the University of Georgia with a degree in communications in 2015, Malcolm was drafted by the New England Patriots and became a Super Bowl champion in February 2017. Among Malcolm's numerous awards, and I'll tell you there were dozens, and accomplishments, both on and off the field, he considers discovering a love of reading his greatest achievement. Initially, reading was a challenge. However, through perseverance, books became an avenue for expanding his curiosity, creativity, and learning. He's published 2 children's books that we're going to hear about more today. In 2016, Malcolm established Share the Magic Foundation with the sole purpose to transform children's lives through literacy. By introducing book ownership to students and households where reading might not be a priority and inspiring emerging readers through innovative and inclusive literacy programming like Read Camp, students at risk of academic failure are empowered to read to a better future. Since its founding, the foundation has placed books in the hands of more than 65,000 young readers and provided Read with Malcolm literacy programming to over 200,000 students. Please join me in welcoming Malcolm Mitchell. Hi, Malcolm.
Hi, I am terribly sorry that you had to read all of that. Now, none of the interesting information was at the end, but no, I appreciate that. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks, Malcolm. And where are you joining us from today?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I am in our office, Share the Magic Foundation office, where we work every day to reach more children and get them excited about the benefits of being an active reader.
That's awesome. Well, for our listeners today, there's 3 topics that Malcolm and I wanted to dive into over the next 20 minutes or so. We wanted to talk a little bit about Share the Magic Foundation, about Malcolm's journey as a children's book author and the importance of representation and authorship for children's stories and books. And we want to talk about the role of men in early learning and a few ways that we might be able to engage men, dads, neighbors, and uncles in a child's early learning. So, Malcolm, I'm going to get us started.
Yes.
And as I said earlier, many people know you for your great accomplishments with the NFL. But what they might not know is your incredible passion for early literacy and early learning. And I wondered if you might take a few minutes to share with our audience who might not know about Share the Magic Foundation, what your vision is for the organization and what you do to support literacy.
Yeah, of course. Well, I should start by saying I probably became an advocate for literacy in an untraditional way. I grew up a reluctant reader, very much so like many kids in my hometown of Valdosta, Georgia. I did the most popular thing in the community. I played football. I didn't fully understand the importance of an education. But once I got to the University of Georgia, thankfully for my athletic ability, I was able to pause, take a moment, look around, and really think deeply about the choices I had made. And I quickly realized in that environment that my choice to only give my body attention and not my brain was a huge mistake. And I realized if I gave my brain just as much attention as I was giving my body, I could accomplish or get to the same end result that I was striving for. So I had to think of a way to do that. And I came amongst reading. I learned that reading would empower me to think freely, think more critical, and really give me the tools that were necessary for overall advancement as a human being. And then I began to learn more about the reading statistics that took place in the environments that I grew up in. And I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to make a change. I wanted to spread this message that reading could positively impact your life. And that's when we created Share the Magic Foundation. Share the Magic Foundation was created in 2016, and we aim to unlock the potential of young lives through literacy. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, in low-income communities, book ownership is a huge problem.
Mhm.
Families are struggling to buy food and pay for bills. The ideal of buying a $15 book is just non-existent. Not because they don't want their students to read, it's just we are facing other issues that may need more attention. So we focus on book ownership. As you said, we've given out thousands and thousands of books to students in underserved communities. We also host virtual reading challenges. And our reading challenges provide that inspiration, that spark, that boost of energy, and provide a platform for kids to really fall in love with reading. And we provide those assets for free.
All for free.
All for free.
Could you talk a little bit about the community? Oh, go ahead.
I always say if it's free, it's for me. So,
I used to say if it's free, I'm hungry. So I'm curious about the communities that you're serving right now, Malcolm. I know that you are based in Georgia, you have roots in Georgia, but you have interest in families all across the country. Right now, how are you thinking about serving kids through Share the Magic Foundation?
Well, the foundation has served students in all 50 states.
Awesome.
We also reached into other countries and supported communities there as well. We focus on low-income communities. When we talk about the issue of literacy, we think about it in terms of minority. But from my experience, it's really powerful to think of it in terms of financial stability. Mm-hmm. It's impoverished communities, regardless of ethnicity, that really struggle most with acquiring the ability to read. Illiteracy is a poor problem. Mm-hmm. Now, we can dive more into our conversation with the proportions of poverty amongst certain groups, but my focus is really to dive into that community where I grew up, and that's a community where we cannot afford books.
Mm-hmm. And in the community you grew up, was your community rural or more suburban, or was it did it have a large population?
As we say in the South, it was country.
It was country. Okay. So you have some roots in country. Yeah. And and how do you think about growing up in the country? And now as you're living in Atlanta, in a city, and you think about serving, at Raising a Reader, we serve communities both, in rural and suburban communities, as well as in our urban, densely populated cities. I'm curious what role that plays and how you drive your work forward, and thinking about serving other rural kids like yourself in the country, or our city kids too.
Well, it's important to know in Valdosta, Georgia, we are probably one of the more fortunate communities in South Georgia. Mm-hmm. We're surrounded by book deserts and poverty pockets. Actually, our little small town is a hub where people go to get out of their very, very small environments. I love my community. I think my community fostered this very strong personality that I've been able to use to give me the confidence to go into different areas. You also sacrifice a bit. Exposure is a huge issue. As we know, the more you're exposed, the more you understand, and the more likely you are to believe you have different options. In my community, unfortunately, most kids, including myself when I was their age, don't understand the options that the world has to offer. The opportunities, or we believe the opportunities, are slim. And that's not the truth. But the truth is what you perceive it to be. And as a child in my community, my truth was the only way I could be a successful human being, the only way I can ensure my mom doesn't have to work 3 jobs, the only way that I can ensure that my family has financial stability is either to be an athlete, some form of entertainment. And as I work with rural communities, as I work with urban communities and inner cities, again, it's not just a South Georgia country person problem. Yeah. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not exposed to that much. I don't really know the opportunities that exist. So I'm just going to go with what's most relevant to me and what's popular. And that is very restricting. And I'm sure you see that as well.
Yeah, and you know what you see, right? So you know what you have access and what you can see, and what's in front of you. I can remember some of my first mentors. Whatever job they had was what I wanted to be, because that was the closest caring adult to me. That wasn't my parents, and my dad's a truck repair mechanic, and I knew I didn't want to or have the skills to do that, to be a mechanic. But I did think, oh, I want to be this other, be like so-and-so's parent or my neighbor who had XYZ opportunity. I'm curious, this session, this conversation is about radical collaboration. And I like to ask people about those unlikely influences, partners, or people who played a role in your life and your journey through to literacy, into this work and your passion for literacy. Do you have any examples of people or partners that maybe were unexpectedly played a role in the work that you're doing today?
Well, if I want to use a very relevant, unlikely or unpredictable situation or encounter, it would be this one between you and I, Michelle. The truth is, you and I come from two completely different places. Everything about us may be different. And as we've talked, we have found some similarities in leisure, in meditation, in our joy in flowers, right?
Yeah.
But, we come from two completely different worlds. And the idea that a small town kid from the environment that I'm telling you about has the opportunity to partner with Raising a Reader, to me, is an example of that unlikely encounter. But not only that, I was taking a step farther and say, I talk about the power of reading because in my mind and through my experience, it creates these unlikely opportunities to exist. Children in low-income communities need these type of moments to take place. So how do you generate them?
Yeah.
Well, through curiosity. And I think that's what has brought you and I here today, our curiosity and trying to find a way to reach more children. So
that's great. That's awesome. And that leads me to ask about one of the things that you were curious about, as I imagine, which led you to being a children's book author. So I want to share.
That's why.
I want to share two books that Malcolm has written and had published. My very favorite book in the whole wide world, which will be available in all of our family shared reading kits starting this fall, and will be in both English and in Spanish, which we're very proud of. And the other is, I think this is your first book that you published back in 2015, The Magician's Hat. And I wondered if you could share, we have a lot of children's books literacy fans listening here today. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become a children's book author. You've started talking about that a little bit today, and what the importance of representation is in book authorships, book authorship as well. Why is it important that the author of the stories that we're putting out to children represent the lived experience of the children who are reading the books?
Yeah, well, let me say I'm very excited about our partnership. It's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to create more opportunities like that and like the one we're having at this moment. So I'm a huge fan of Raising a Reader. So this makes me smile.
Oh, good.
How I became an author.
Yes.
I was in a bookstore and I went through this journey of becoming an avid reader. I started when I was 19 or 20 years old, which, as we know, is way too late. Thankfully, football gave me the opportunity to correct my mistake later in life. I go through this transformation and I come out on the other side and I say to myself, I need to tell people about this cool thing I found, which is reading.
Yeah.
I need to expose all of my friends in my community who look just like me, who I behave just like. I made other choices, but don't misunderstand the connectivity I have with that community. I was participating in, I would say, 80% of the choices that everyone else in that community was making. I need to tell them how to free themselves. I need to tell them how to empower themselves. I need to educate them on the tools that I believe would allow them to go further than they ever imagined. How can I do that? I can't be everywhere at once. So I thought to myself, what can? And I was holding a book when I had the thought. And I said, you know what? I'll write a book. And I right off the basis of wanting to inspire, inform, and educate all kids to understand the value of reading. I truly believe you give yourself the best chance at becoming the fullest human being you can possibly be through literature. And it's the act of reading itself that kind of unlocks that potential. That's why I became a writer. Representation matters matters a lot to me, because I remember being afraid of writing a book. And I was afraid of writing a book because I had never seen anyone like me, my age, from my community, with my background, accomplish such a goal. So representation matters, because once you do it, you free up everyone else around you who knows about you to do the same.
Oh, I love that. And do you have any advice for any aspiring authors? Any inspiration and advice? Maybe a first step to get them going?
Get your first draft done.
Get your first draft done. How long did it take you to do your first draft?
Forever. It takes me forever. But you have to understand, your first draft is not your final draft. You have plenty of time to fix it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's terrible, just get through your first draft.
Get through your first draft. I love that. That's a great advice and a great tip. And I just want to underscore what you were just saying around not seeing yourself or knowing anyone that had written a book, a children's book. You hadn't seen that before. And just to give a statistic, that a couple of years ago, the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin revealed that just 7% of children's books that were published in this given year, it was in 2017, were written by Black, Latinx, or Indigenous authors combined. So just 7% of all children's books that were published that year. So we've got a ways to go in, we're doing better, but we have a ways to go. And I'd say also another thing that was really startling to me and to the field, again, we're getting more attention here, was that in that same study, they found that just 29% of the children's books that were published about Black and African-American children, of the books that were published, only 29% were written by Black authors. So that lived experience is critical. Yeah, just 29% of all the stories that are written about Black children and Black families were written by Black authors.
Yeah, well, and kudos to the authors. Never take anything away from someone trying to make an impact. I want to make sure I make that statement.
Agreed.
But it's just like anything else. It's if you want to be a doctor, who's more likely to have the most influence on you? A doctor that looks like you.
Right.
So if I would encourage African American authors, if you want to have impact, and it took me a very long time to learn that. I know we don't have much time, but look at the difference in the two books.
Yep.
The information I had when I wrote this book was much different than this one, and that's why they look different.
Yeah.
I realize my social responsibility, not only to those who look like me, but to our entire country.
Yep.
And that's why I took a different stance on my very favorite book in the whole wide world. So.
That's great. I want to transition to one more topic while I have you here. We have, so you've been working in early learning, early literacy for the past 6 years, and you've likely noticed that it's dominated by a lot of wonderful women in the field, and we don't have as many men in the field as we may like, although there are several male leaders in the space in early literacy. Mm-hmm. But it's not often that I have the opportunity to be in conversation with a man that's in our space that's advocating for family engagement, for representation. and for early literacy. And I was just curious to get your thoughts on, in speaking to the people who are watching with us today, who may likely be women who are trying to engage males, whether it's dads or uncles or neighbors or boyfriends or grandpas. Do you have any thoughts on that, being a male that's in this space, and you're bringing both men and women obviously together with your reading challenges in support of kids, but any advice for us to think about connecting or bringing in the role of men? We so often in this country focus on the primary caregiver of the women, but there was a Pew Research study that showed that dads are just as likely as mom to say that parents is extremely important to their identity. There's literally no difference in the data when surveyed. So any tips for us engaging dads or men?
One of the things that have helped me most, I am a new father. My son is 10 months old. And I didn't grow up in a household with a male figure. I grew up in a single parent household with just my mother. Majority of my life has been dominated by very strong women. So I got to this point in life where I had a son, I had social responsibility, and I realized that I was completely unaware of what that meant. So I started using the phrase men unaware, especially in low income environments. And the thing that has helped me most realize my value, and my value in being present, my value in using my voice, is just being completely aware of the impact that'll make. If I can go a step further, I'd say being a father, I couldn't understand its value because I didn't have a father. Being a male author, I couldn't understand its value because I had never seen a young Black male author. So if I educate myself on what that value is, I think and I believe we'll start taking a different approach to how we treat these circumstances. If I'm aware that my son is more likely to be addicted to a substance, if I'm not around, I can guarantee you I'm going to make sure I'm around. My son is more likely to pick up a book and read because he sees his father do so, because it is so uncommon. Well, then I need to make sure he sees that. So to answer your question, I would say just make men aware.
I love that. Make men aware, bring them into the conversation, and let's make sure dads know that the role that they can play. I remember my dad was a reluctant reader, if you will, and he would share Kelly Blue books with me. And as a mechanic, and he didn't read a lot of stories to me, but he definitely sat with me and showed me how to read up about cars and their value, again, as a mechanic. But that was important to me. It stood out, and it also was that bonding experience. So thank you for sharing that. Malcolm, we are at time, but I'd love for you to share with the listeners where they can learn more about you, your books, Read with Malcolm, and share the Magic Foundation.
Yes, you can learn more about what I am doing, or you can reach out to me at readwithmalcolm.com. You can also find me on all of our social platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Read with Malcolm, just like it sounds. At Read with Malcolm is how you can find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here with us today. I know we had so many more things that we wanted to talk about, but as you mentioned at the beginning, this is just the beginning of our partnership. We're so proud and honored and excited to be partnering with Share the Magic Foundation this summer with our Super Summer Learning Adventures, where all of the children, the 40,000 children who are involved in our summer program, will have access to the Read Camp. Really fun way to get our kids and families engaged in reading this summer. And we're just completely excited to be working with you, Malcolm, and your team. So thank you for being here today. Thanks to everyone for listening, and have a great day.
All right. Thank you all.